Today we're going to be going over the data overview for Alexander High School. So this quote here, the goal is to turn data into information and information into insight. And I feel like we should keep that goal in mind as we proceed through this overview. So the introduction, we are focusing on Alexander High School, specifically on 9th and 10th grade students for science. We will be targeting school improvement teams and grade level science teachers with this presentation. Our purpose here is to determine student performance in science and discuss ways to improve based on the data presented. So first up, we have some demographics for the past 4 years of data collected, starting in 2015 and ending at the end of the 2018-2019 school year. Here we have our total student enrollment for each year, and we have our data disaggregated by male and female. Pretty steady, no significant increases or decreases. They just kind of maintain their levels over the 4 years. Okay, next we have our race and ethnicity, disaggregated based off of the totals from the previous slide. We can see that it is a predominantly white high school, the largest percentage being the 61% from the 2018-19 school year, and our smallest percentage are multicultural. We don't have any percentage of Native Americans in the school. And here are those same numbers, just represented as pie charts. And we can see here, predominantly white, the second most predominant ethnicity being Black, followed by Hispanic and Asian. Okay, here we have our economic status. Our economic status for students ranges of around 37, starting here in our 4th year is 38. So there are no significant jumps or decreases in the status of the students. They kind of float around 37, 38%. And these are based off of students eligible for free and reduced lunch. Here we have our demographics of students with limited English proficiency and then students with disability. And we can see that there was a slight increase from 2015 to the 2016 school year, but other than that, the numbers are relatively consistent throughout the years. So next we're moving on to our discipline data. We've had a rise in the percentage of students who are in ISS over the 4 years of data, while our OSS numbers have stayed relatively consistent. We do not have the data available for chronic absenteeism for these 2 years, but we can assume it's somewhere around these two numbers as there was not a significant change in the percentages here. And we most of the students who are absent fall into the 5 or fewer days absent category. All right, moving on to teacher demographics. Here we have the amount of male versus female teachers at Alexander High School. The numbers are fairly even over our 4-year data period, as well as our ethnicity numbers. They are relatively stable as well. They don't change too much. And over on the right-hand side, we have the total number of teachers for the 4 years. All right, moving into the data that we're looking at for this overview, we're focusing on 9th and 10th grade milestone science students. So these are students that participated in the 9th grade milestone and the 10th grade milestone for biology and physical science respectively. So looking at this data, which we also have as a graph, represented as a graph here, we have our highest percentage of students in the proficient learners category, which is a good thing for our ninth graders. That means that the majority of them are meeting the standard criteria for the biology milestone. We have a few rises and falls for the beginning learners. Not too much change for our developing, and then we have had an increase in distinguished learners, although we did have a bit of a dip between the third and fourth years of data collected. And I think the goal that we should be working for is to increase the amount of students in this category. Okay, here we have our data compared to the county and to the state across our 4 years. So you can see that for 2016, we were lower in our beginning learner category compared to county and state. And then over the years, it kind of catches up, stays even, and there's not too much fluctuation within all the data. Okay. Moving on to our 10th grade physical science milestone data, we have the 4 years, our total number of students, and with our total number of students in each learner category and a percentage. Here it is in a graph as well. We've had a decrease in beginning learners, which is a good thing. That means that they're moving on to other categories, which is what we want. We've had an increase in developing learners. We had a significant increase between the third and fourth years here for our proficient learners, but then the distinguished learners is a bit of a problem here. It's very small amount, and there's not been a significant amount of increase there. Okay, so here is that same data compared to the state and county data for the same milestone. And about how it was with biology, not too far off from the others. Sometimes we're lower than the state, sometimes we're higher than the state for different categories. There's just that fluctuation between each year. Okay, so now we're going to compare the percentages of the learner categories for both of those tests. So here we have the two graphs lined up evenly, both going up to 50%, so we're on the same scale. And we can see that for biology, we have a higher amount of proficient learners and distinguished learners, which is a good thing. That means that the ninth graders are doing fairly well on their biology milestones at the end of the year. But then when we compare it to our physical science scores, there's a decrease. We have more students that fall under beginning and developing learners. So this is just 1 year difference for the students, so 9th grade, 10th grade, but there are some significant differences in the numbers presented. Okay, so the strengths. We have a lower percentage of beginning learners than the rest of Douglas County, and that's for both of our milestones. Consistent amount of proficient students in biology. There's an increase in distinguished learners in biology, and there was an increase in proficient learners in physical science. But some of our key weaknesses, areas to work on, consistently low percentage of distinguished learners in physical science, and that's where we want to push our students. We want to push them into the proficient and distinguished learner range. We have more beginning and developing learners in physical science than biology, and there is not a significant increase in distinguished learners for either science, so that's what we're working towards. We want those students to fall into those higher categories. We want them to meet the standards at the minimum and excel, beyond that. So moving forward, what we can do, what we suggest that we do, is we need to analyze our teaching strategies specifically for those 10th grade physical science classes. What are we doing that isn't so helpful? What can we do that would support those students more? We need to look into research-based strategies that are specific for teaching sciences, especially that physical science milestone. Physical science relies on a lot of math as well, so we need more support in that class if we want to push those students to those higher learning categories. We need professional development for increased rigor for both. So we want both sciences. We want students in the proficient and distinguished range. So we need increased professional development to push teachers to increase the rigor of their courses. Change physical science to an 11th grade milestone. Now, this has been something that Alexander High School has discussed before, possibly to make the workload easier, to give older students a better chance of passing those milestones. And also student surveys for engagement. See what students would like to learn, what they would like to see done in a classroom. Perhaps that would help them engage more with the content and retain more of that information when it comes time for the end of year course. And yeah, that's what we can look forward to working on, what we can discuss further and develop a plan of action on.